So why should we boycott factory farming? Let's face it, we're doing a pretty average job at being human. Over the last, 80 to 100 years, especially post-World War II, we have wreaked havoc on our environment and our food systems, and that's playing out in terms of the health consequences that we're seeing in modern society. If we think about the biggest impact that we have on the face of the planet right now, it would have to be agriculture. Whenever you fly in a plane and you look out of the window, the main way that we interact with the face of the planet, apart from housing for that matter, is via agriculture. And that is having a huge ecological impact on the environment. The main degradation that we're seeing today is through the process of factory farming and intensive commercial agricultural practices such as monocropping for that matter. But today, let's focus specifically on factory farming. Most of the agricultural produce and arable agricultural land in the US and Canada and most of the developed world is used to grow broad-acre monocrops such as corn, wheat and soy. A large percentage of these crops, from my understanding up to 70% or more, is used to feed animals in feedlot environments, which becomes the meat that we see in fast food outlets and cheap meat in supermarkets that we see worldwide. This type of agricultural practice is causing a huge strain on the environment and a huge strain on the ecosystems which are connected to it. We even have situations where the runoff from these farms, these factory farms, is going down into the Mexican Gulf and causing a huge dead zone, which is reducing the oxygen in the water in that area and causing a swathe of kill-off of fish and species in the water. This is a decision that we have an opportunity to change. Jared Diamond, the author of a fantastic book called Guns, Germs and Steel, was the first one to sort of analyze how society evolved and why was it that certain cultures were able to access certain technology at critical points in human evolution, which led to the agricultural and industrial revolutions. In his most recent book, Collapse, he looks at historically some of the major societal collapses and assesses and analyzes the reasons why those collapses happened. Were they because of disease, or were they because of agricultural issues, or were they because of population pressure or food shortages? And in his book, he also analyzes 3 or 4 different case studies of societies that have averted collapse. And I think this is particularly telling when it comes to understanding how we can avert ecological collapse on planet Earth, plus also the importance of the decisions that you and I make on a day-to-day basis when it comes to boycotting factory-farmed animals. There was a story about an island called Tikopia in the Pacific. It is a remote Polynesian island and has been inhabited for about 3,500 years. These Polynesian people came from, as we now know, North Philippines and southern Taiwan, and for whatever pressures they were under at that point in time were unaware, ventured off into the Pacific to find new homeland. This particular island, Tikopia, is the top of a volcano that comes out in the middle of the ocean. The closest island is about a day's sailing, of which there's about 100 people on that island, and then it's another day or two to the next major inhabited island. A vessel visits this island once a month at average, and sometimes a lot less. So it's one of the most remote places on Earth that's inaccessible via plane or helicopter. These people have successfully lived and maintained a steady population on this island for thousands of years, but they made one critical distinction in how they saved their island from collapse in comparison to other islands that have collapsed, such as Easter Island, which is well documented. A few thousand years ago, the 4 chiefs on the island got together to discuss some of the challenges that they were facing at the time. One of the big challenges was that in Polynesian culture, pigs are seen as a status symbol. So the culture collects pigs and they eat pigs for ceremonial and nutrition purposes as a foodstuff. But one of the things the chief was noticing is that these pigs were taking up more food in order to produce a pig than it would be to utilize that food for other purposes, such as feeding it directly to humans as opposed to feeding it to the pigs. This was causing a shortage of food on the island, and they were having to grow excess food just to feed the pigs, and it's an inefficient method of converting food into protein. So they decided to, against a lot of their culture and ethics, to get rid of all the pigs on Tikopia. This happened over a period of time, and they transitioned to plant-based foods with some protein sources from a more sustainable area, such as the ocean of which they lived on. This decision eventually resulted in them averting political disruption, ecological collapse, and also population collapse. The other key distinctions that they made is they stopped slash and burn agriculture, which means the Polynesians used to go in and clear large swathes of land by burning it down and then plant agriculture and then move on to the next land. They could see that this was not sustainable, so they adopted small-scale permaculture multi-tier systems where they planted plants in combination with each other, and also it's called, in modern understanding of it, it's called companion planting, where they have plants that grow together and support each other in a unique way. This system of agriculture is a dense system of agriculture which provides small plots of land for small community members, but is incredibly efficient at providing year-round harvest opportunities. Because they realised that there was a limit to which this island that they lived on could support the population. And by making these key distinctions, specifically around how to get more efficient food sources without ruining the environment or having to grow excess food, which puts more stress on the environment, plus also, in particular, how to do multi-tier local permaculture-style agriculture, were two incredibly key distinct decisions that they made thousands of years ago. To this very day, there is 1,100 people living on that island, and they live in harmony and have complete access and food security on that island. Had those chiefs not made that decision, it could have been a very different story and something similar to the ecological collapse that we've seen on Easter Island. Now, if I take this idea of Tikopia and helicopter out and look at what we're doing in the world right now, we are chopping down huge parts of the Amazon rainforest to grow corn, wheat and soy, and then we're shipping that to factory farms in North America in particular, where we're feeding it to these animals. And these feedlot environments are horrible environments for the animals. They are no longer in a natural environment. They're huddled in numbers that would disturb even the most ardent viewer. And on top of that, they get sick because these animals were never designed to eat this food. So they have to be fed or injected hormones and antibiotics in order to try to keep them alive and healthy up until the time that they're slaughtered. There's 2 or 3 major reasons why we shouldn't be doing this. 1, it doesn't make sense to chop down the Amazon rainforest to grow food for cattle. 2, the ecological impact of factory farming is immense and it's been well documented, especially when it comes to runoff and dead zones in the ocean, and additionally when it comes to the degradation of topsoil. And 3, the health impact of eating factory farm animal products. The resulting products from factory farm animals are high in omega-9 and omega-6 fatty acids when in comparison to omega-3 fatty acids. It has been shown that this type of animal products causes inflammation in the body, which can cause all sorts of chronic degenerative disease, from heart conditions to cancer, etc. It's at this point in time in our history that we need to come together as a conscious community and make a new decision about what we're going to eat in order to not only preserve our health but also preserve the health of the planet that we live on, and also be more compassionate to animals. And that is why I think we should boycott factory farmed animals.